Hello, Magnify sisters. It's Brooke Walker, and I have the privilege, and it does feel like a privilege to be in the hosting chair, especially for today's conversation. I'm so excited about the conversation to come and also the topic itself, because here's the truth. In our lives, there are so many scenarios we run into that feel, I'm going to use the word polarizing, or maybe on a lighter note, just tricky, right? Tricky to navigate. You might have someone in your ward that you feel strongly about because you disagree, frankly, with their political viewpoints, maybe with the upcoming election pending, or maybe with general conference happening in just these last few weeks. Perhaps you're running into conversations at the dinner table that get a little tricky, a little heated because of how some messages were interpreted. Or we're heading into the holiday season and you're gearing up for a snarky comment that might be made at the extended family party about your gentle parenting styles. So many applications, but at Magnify, our goal is to be a force for good. And we recognize that a powerful way to do that is by being peacemakers, especially in these kind of polarizing situations. So with this on our minds, we thought it would be timely to have a candid girl chat, a candid conversation about how to navigate polarizing situations in a more Christ-like way. I'm here with Shima Baughman and Natalie Jensen, and we've invited them to be here for this topic, particularly because they are both really good communicators. They have wide-reaching circles, and they're willing to go there on these kind of conversations. They're women who, from my experience, aren't afraid to express their opinions, but they do so in a way that is loving and well-intended. They're willing to listen. They act as peacemakers. You ladies are perfect for this conversation and this topic. I'm so excited.
Oh, you're
So
nice.
nice.
I kind of feel like I'm an actually girl, so I don't know if I'm really the right person for this. They'll be like, actually,
That's a good way to say it. Actually, hold on.
actually, it's not
But
quite
there's something
right.
to that, right? Because when we talk
Well,
about, if you use the phrase PC, that doesn't always apply to real relationships because you genuinely care about this person and you want to shoot straight, and you both do that really well. I'm also giggling because I'm a Magnify listener as much as I am a host, and I consider this like an hour with girlfriends where you're just having, and this really is going to be a girlfriend chat. So I'm
So
thrilled to
good.
have both of you here.
I'm so grateful. Natalie is so good at just being, I mean, as much as she's actually good, that's why I thought she's perfect for this talk, just frankly, because she is able to kind of, with love, articulate differences. And I do think today, like you said, polarizing, divisive, whatever, so few people actually articulate differences so that we know them. I actually think there's such a benefit when I get to hear from Natalie when she disagrees with me, because she'll let me know, and I love that. She'll also tell me when I need a blowout, and so
And
that's what friends do.
She'll do it while casually sipping on her Diet Coke, like she is right now.
Always,
Yeah.
never without her.
Shima, there is something to that, because if we reference just the political season that's upon us, which is just one facet that we could apply this topic to, I would rather have the conversation and learn and be curious than avoid the conversation. But that's kind of become our default, right?
Yeah.
Is to avoid. There are things we don't talk about, politics and religion. And it seems when you find that woman that can meet you there and have the conversation, maybe you don't agree. And I know you both don't agree on some of the things that you talk about, opinionate, believe in. It's so refreshing though to still be able to have a conversation and a connection. And I think that's the goal.
Absolutely.
Totally. And I think that's just a friendship goal in general. I mean, the only way to make friends is to find commonality, right?
Yes.
Like whenever I meet someone new, I'm like, tell me where you're from. Oh, you're from that city. I love that city. Or tell me, those are the first ways to make friends, is to find your common ground. And if we avoid everything and snake around things and subjects, we can't really find our common ground throughout it, because at the end of the day, when it comes to politics, whatever, we all want what's best for our families and for our children. And we all agree on that, at least, right?
Yeah.
We may have very different ideas about the way in which that should be navigated. But I think that like trying to find the common as opposed to the polarizing is a great way to kind of like smooth over it.
So one thing that Natalie pointed out, and I think it's a good lesson for all of us, is she'll go to these very unusual circles. Like, so she grows up in Provo, becomes an actress early on, right? Graduates early or leaves high school early, goes to New York City, where she's never been. She has no experience, right? But then she befriends everyone. And people think, the Jewish people think she's Jewish. And the LDS people think she's, they follow her blog. She has this blog about being LDS and single. And I just think it's like Paul. It reminds me of Paul because obviously Paul was one of our greatest missionaries. And what he says is like, to the Jews, I'm a Jew. To the Romans, I'm a Roman, right? And I think that's where Natalie works. And it's like Scripture and Natalie both say that to whoever it is, it's like, let's find common ground on whatever it might be, right? It's like I have neighbors across the street that are gay. And I wrote this op-ed that is about kind of the sensationalizing of religion. And, I didn't know how they would take it, frankly. And I saw them and she actually complimented me. She's like, thanks for your op-ed about, faith. And I was like, and she's like, I grew up LDS, I'm no longer, but we can still connect on the fact that she's like, I love that you can express your opinion, that we can have dialogue, like whatever it might be, like you can connect. Yeah. We also connect. We both have kids. And her, she loves to serve refugees, and so do I, right? And like there's things that, and Natalie's good at figuring out those quickly, but I think if we can figure out what to connect over, then we can also say that, well, but actually, right? Like those actually comments, don't you think? I don't know.
I love that.
I do. You have to have that relationship first.
Yes.
And know that you love each other. Like Shima and I don't agree on actually a lot, but there is more that we do agree on and like think the same way. And I don't think that you need to think the same way to have a friendship. Like I have friends with very polarizing political beliefs to mine. And one time it came up where this person wanted to have a dialogue with me and I was like, yeah, let's totally do it. And it was friendly and they were the one getting heated. And I was like, you know what? Like, it is not worth it to me. You're not going to change me. I'm not going to change you. I love you to pieces, but this is just something that maybe we're not going to talk about. And so in some situations,
yes,
I think it is important after you've tried like a healthy navigation, then to be like, well, let's just kind of step away from it.
Let's move to a new topic.
Well, I think it's tough, especially I had a friend was on like a mom's group that included LDS people and not LDS people. And the LDS people started using the mom's group to further some like school board political agendas. And she was like deeply upset about it because she's like, here we are, a religion that believes in a separation of church and state. The last thing I want is for my friends and neighbors to think that I'm supporting this candidate that these women are producing on this mom's group, which is supposed to be just like a, hey gals, like who's the best cobbler? Who's the best whatever? Do you know what I mean? Cobbler. Do people even use that term anymore?
Yes, of course.
I need a cobbler. And then I'm going to go to get a fascinator. I'm so sure. But I think that like at that point, it had gone on for a while. And I think when people use like the word emails to do political stuff, like that's the stuff that's the real tricky real life. How do I get through this? Yeah. And when she called me and was like, what do I do? I was like, well, I think you do need to have a conversation with the group and just be like, hey guys, let's keep this to a da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Did it make everyone mad? Yeah. But you know what? It stopped. Thank goodness. Then it kept going in the ward emails, the political stuff in the ward emails. And she kind of had to have a conversation with her bishop that was like, this can be very polarizing for so many. Like I'm cool with it, but like, I'm just trying to be sensitive to the needs of others and how this is going to come across.
So let me ask you this. I think there's kind of two layers to this as I think about it. Like we can dissolve our annoyance, if we want to call it that. We can get to a place of like, I don't know, where we're pacified and at least internally we feel level and decent about how we're viewing this person. But then there's kind of the next level, not just to dissolve the irritation or the perplexity, but how to truly love them from like, okay, you're not bugging me, but now I actually like you and I even love you. How do we get there?
That's tough when people are condescending to you, right? Like I had one person be like, Natalie, tell me why you feel this way about something. And I was like, well, blah, blah, blah. And then this person said, I just know that if I had an hour with you and I told you everything I know, that you would think like I do. And I was like, you're the cutest. And I just know that if I gave you, you know what I mean? I kind of came back with this person like that. And I was kind of pricked and annoyed at it because it was so condescending. Like, you're just such a dumb idiot. You don't know what I know. And if you knew what I knew, you'd feel the same way. And I was like, no, home skillet.
We sometimes do that in the church too, I think. Where
I think you're right.
But this scripture, and you go scripture posture, or you go general authority quote, or we even do this when people step away from the church. I think even unintentionally we get into this mindset, this fixed thought line of, if they knew what I knew.
Right. Well, and those people do that to us. Like, you're unenlightened, you're sheep, You don't know what I've read online. There's a lot of that going on. And the thing that I had to do was I had to look at this person and think of all the wonderful times we've had together
Mhm.
and wonderful things he and his wife and these people have done for me, and realize that like I really do think this person is a wonderful person. And I do believe that if I sat down with him and gave him a list of all the things, he'd probably bat a few of them down, but then see my perspective really ultimately. But I in this instance, I just was like, we're not going to talk about politics. I love you so much. Like, I do. I love you. And then I just have to go over all the things that I love about these people and all the beautiful things I've seen them do, acts of service, thinking of others. And I can truly honestly say that I love these people. I see the flaws, I see their failures. I hope that they feel the same way about me.
Yeah, and you know what you just described as sort of a spirit check. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah,
you did a spirit check on this person. Like, here's
I
what I
did.
know deep down about who they really are and how they really have showed up. Because what we're talking about essentially are these mortal topics. And not that they don't have significance or importance, they do. But when you really look at
But
someone's divine
yeah.
spirit, like the lens changes.
And it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Totally. And I think with people that we don't know as well as, Natalie's example is obviously somebody she knows and she can look at the things that she loves about them. I think it's really important to try to put them in that place. Like, this is my sister or my brother. But, something that I taught in my criminal law class last year that like changed my view about this is, thinking about Elder Suarez's talk about brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. And basically there was this hypothetical where everyone decided how much to punish this person that committed a murder, and everyone decides like, okay, we punish him at the island or we punish him at this other place, but no one talked about not punishing this person. That was kind of the short version, right? And then I had two brothers in my class, and I said to one of the brothers, I was like, well, what would you do if your brother was the one that committed the murder? And he said, well, I wouldn't punish him. And then of course the brother said the same about him. And I just think like it actually has transformed my view of criminal justice. I'm like, if I saw every sex offender, if I saw every rapist, if I saw every murderer as a brother or sister, I mean, you think, and this happens, people write me all the time. They're like, my brother's in prison for drugs, like my brother's in prison for this and that, my sister, whatever. And I just think like, we need to try to see each other as that. That is really the gospel. And why do we call each other brother and sister at church? It's because we need to try to see each other as that. And that's the challenge, right? And sometimes they're not our friends and they think differently. And I'm just like, that's my challenge to myself, is like, how do I see everyone as a brother and sister? And not to say, that means that they shouldn't be punished. They shouldn't, I shouldn't keep them away from my children if they have problems with children. But can I see them as my brother and sister and have compassion and true love rather than kind of condescension and like, this is an other and I can't relate to them at all. Well, it's like, I'm flawed too, right? It's like, I think that concept of grace, because we're all sinners, like is a real one for this. It's like, if you can see that we're all sinners, we're all in the same boat, because we don't know how God's going to judge, one crime versus another or sin. And in looking at how Christ dealt with people, it's like, it wasn't how the religious leaders were dealing it. So we don't know what God's going to say, but all we know is we are all sinners and we're relying on Jesus. So can we be more compassionate to those that are like, have the least reputations in our world? Right.
And we are brothers and sisters. I mean, it's Elder Holland. I am not my brother's keeper, but I am my brother's brother.
Oh, I love that.
And you can't love somebody unless you know them.
Yeah.
So once you know somebody and then you see what they're struggling with, then you go, okay, I see why you're voting in this way. I see why this is the most important issue to you. Once you find the common, then you can dig into that. But it's like, you got to fill the emotional bank account first.
Yes. What I do is don't always just read the headline and think And so it's always really made me question, like when someone's getting thrown under the bus, headlines or even friends in the neighborhood, like I always think twice. I know Natalie does too, because we both talked about this with different people. Like sometimes the story that you hear is not the right story. And there's always a deeper story. And there's two halves to every story. And so I try to be careful, especially now that's happened to me in my life where, there's hard things that happen and everyone's not going to say kind things. And you just hope that you treat people with the way you'd want to be treated in the media or friends and, that.
Yeah, generally there are reasons why there's a backstory to everything. And I think that's one of the nice things about being an actor is that like my whole job is like being curious about people's why Why do you drink that thing? Why do you do that? And so it's made me very, very curious about like, which mascara do you use? I mean, like stupid stuff, right? And we have differences of opinions about all sorts of different things. But understanding the why, to Shima's point, and realizing that like nothing is black and white. No marriage is black and white. No divorce is black and white. There are always two to tango in every situation and in every fight or any conflict you're in.
So true.
I think that's a really great point, Shim.
Well, I was just going to say, I think we know we are complicated ourselves. Like we see ourselves as very complicated beings, but sometimes we like to see others as black and white. And it's like, that's not true. They're also complicated beings. And maybe one day they were like, seem like a jerk and other days are not. But that's me too. Like if you see me on a bad day, like you might be like, she's a real jerk, you know? And it's like, you see me driving around fast, cutting people off and all the bad driving things. I'm a bad driver.
I love when Shima's like trying to find her fault. She's like, sometimes I drive fast.
I drive very bad. No, it's like excessive.
You are a terrible driver, but I love you.
I'm also impatient. I have lots of other flaws.
Yes, you are, but I love you.
But I'm just saying, like, we don't see them as complicated. Don't you feel like?
Yes, we hold them to our standard, right? And I'm so guilty of this because I was raised in a very loving, accepting, open, safe, happy, delightful LDS home, right? The way I was raised within the church was a totally pro-woman, go for it, girl, get your education, be the best you can be. And so it's hard for me, to be quite honest, when people have very, very negative opinions about women in the gospel in general. And then I'm just like, whoa, like I have to really humble myself and be like, they weren't raised by Rich and Kathy.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't have what I had. I had such a beautiful, firm bedrock of familiar support that like I was able to soar in ways that other people couldn't. Then I met people in New York at a very young age who had so many differences that like my mind was opened to so much that not everybody has had that. Not everybody's been able to live in different countries. Not everyone's been able to live outside of where they're from. And so their perspective is very much a product of who they are and how they were raised. And that's something I have to keep reminding myself about because I just expect that everyone's going to be up to the same standard that I expect or have the same thought that I would have. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I had a very bizarre and unique coming of age. And so it's informed 90% of who I am.
Yeah. I love that. We've already identified some really good, I think, practical, actionable approaches. I like the idea of searching for the why. That's a big deal, to search for the why behind this person's approach or beliefs. We talked about not, assigning these binary situations, that you need to be able to see both sides. And we talked about not holding people to our own standard or our own lens or view. Anything else we could add to that list? I find myself thinking sometimes if I'm in these types of conversations, I sometimes role play proximity. Like I'll look at this woman in front of me who is expressing something so different than how I feel or what I believe. And I'll think, okay, what if this was my mom saying this? Or someone that I actually love right now. I mean, not to double down on the driving example, but just last week I was driving in a school zone, minivan mom moment. And this guy comes up on me hot, behind.
That's like me.
And I'm like, okay, maybe it was Shima. I can't be sure.
That's probably me.
But it was probably Shima.
I'm like, we're in a school zone for crying out loud.
Oh, yeah.
And then this person zips to my right to take a turn. And I know this person. It's my husband's best friend. He's a wonderful, I know everything good about him. I could go on and on.
Yeah.
And all of that anger just melted away because I knew him. I sometimes think in those moments where we're not naturally conjuring up the love or the vibes that we hope and that we think Jesus Christ would apply to this conversation or this relationship, can we fake it? Can we say, what if this person was, almost storytell a little bit to help give this person the grace that we want someone to give us,
Totally. I think too, like, exposing yourself to that type of person. So if you think in your mind, like, what are your biases? And I grew up Muslim, right, before I was joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But and so there was kind of this like implicit bias against Jews, I have to say, right, with my grandmother from Iran, and my parents weren't that way. They were very educated and had Jewish friends, but still there was just this lingering bias, right? Like, and we all have these biases lingering in our family. So I'm not the only one. I know that, but I remember taking my first pro bono case as a lawyer in New York, and I specifically picked a Jewish rabbi that I could represent. And I was nervous. I'm like, what's he gonna think? Like, I'm Muslim and now LDS and he's Jewish. And just that friendship, that like kinship that we formed, and it like changed my life, because I think I now know somebody really close to me who I'm like advocating. I spent thousands of hours on his case, right? And I loved him, and I loved his beliefs, and I loved his religion. And like ever since that point, you know, I've been dying to get to Israel, and I got to Israel. And so anyway, I just think like whoever it is that there's a bias in your mind or in your family about, like, could you find your space to kind of enter, allow them to enter your space in some way, right? Whether it's service or whether, you know, like whatever that person is for you, could you just do that, right? Because then you do gain this like kinship, right? Because you know that.
Yes. And how do you get there? Because I guess I'm thinking even a step before that, because self-awareness is part of this too, right? Being able to look in the mirror and identify that bias or identify that weakness. So,
well, and I think most people can't, and and therein lies the biggest problem and why things are polarized.
So how do we though? How do you guys check yourselves to see if we might be judging, or if we might be, you know, mislabeling, or if we might? How do you check yourself to make sure those biases are actually addressed?
So Abraham Lincoln said, he said, I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. And I just like love that line so much, of all the things he said, because I think that's where the self-awareness comes. Like, if you don't like someone, that's your self-awareness.
That's how you know.
That's your check.
Yeah, good point.
We're supposed to love our enemies. We're supposed to, and again, you know, those enemies then become non-enemies. We're supposed to love them. So if there's anyone you're finding yourself not loving, then it's like, well, okay, like, why am I feeling this way, right? And then do all the self-therapy on yourself. Where you're like, why am I feeling this way? How do I fix this feeling? I don't want to feel anger in my heart towards anyone. How do I fix that?
At a recent Magnify event, I think it was Lisa Valentine Clark who said she was listening to conference and something was said that hit in a not comfy way, like in a not good, cozy way. And she felt a physical and emotional reaction to what was being said from a church leader that she adores and respects. And that was her checkpoint. That's kind of what I hear you say. I do the same with mom guilt. If mom guilt ever bubbles up, to me, that's almost like a red flag. Like, check yourself here. Is that what I'm hearing you say, Shima? That if you feel that angst or that negativity towards someone, that might be a time to look in the mirror?
Yeah, I think if you're feeling like you don't like someone, there should be something that you can fix, you know? Yeah. And maybe, not to say like someone's abusing you. Obviously there's boundaries and we all know that. But I'm just saying, like, in general, like, that's what I do. If like I'm feeling negative feelings towards someone, I'm like, why is that? Am I jealous? Am I, you know, like, do we disagree? And I need to like kind of, but it's a self-analysis. It's all me. It's not them. That's how I realize it.
Yeah. But there's also like times and seasons when you don't have to deal with, like, I think it's amazing to try and do that with all your relationships, right? Just so that you have this like happy worldview. But at the same time, like, there are just some people who are not for me. And there are some people, and I'm not for them. And that is A-okay. And you can go with God, and I love you. But not everybody loves a juicy peach, right? I don't even know that. I'm more like black licorice, but you know.
So maybe in conclusion, what are the benefits and the blessings of being able to navigate these polarizing situations, whatever they may be, through the lens of Jesus Christ, or in a more Christ-like way? I know you both have rich friendships that have come out of these types of connections. Any other blessings that you can identify as we try to at least see things from a wider view?
I think from a selfish perspective, it just makes you more interesting, certainly, to be like more curious and put yourself in other people's situations. But the friendships that I have, if I was only friends with people who thought the same way that I did and, you know, believed all the same things, I live in Dallas, Texas, I would have no friends, like, because, you know, there's just everybody I am friends with has like a little bit of this of me and a little bit of that of me and a little bit of this. And I feel like it's all this like great extension of like all the wild things that make me me. And I have beautiful female friendships. Like, I could not be more blessed with my female friendships. And they are so enriching to my life. And I'm not calling, you know, every girlfriend or sending every funny meme that I think about this politics thing to all my girlfriends. But, you know, I have these little pebbling moments with each of my friends, and it still is keeping me in this beautiful community. And really, when it comes down to it, it's about like serving and loving each other. And I know that any of these people feel the same thing about me. They'll be like, oh yeah, well, she's crazy in this way. But, you know, and I'm generally, you know, from being in New York, and then also now being in Dallas, being a Latter-day Saint is the minority. And so I'm already kind of a minority person in this area, but I've been overwhelmed by how open so many people have been. Not everybody. I mean, there are a few that are like, well, you're not Christian. I know you say you think you are, but that's cute and you're not Christian. And I'm like, that's okay. And you can think that, but I'm just going to still serve you like Jesus would serve you and love you until you realize that I'm a really good deal. Because
I'm a juicy peach and you want it.
I'm a
You
juicy peach.
Oh, I love that. I just think of like our ultimate example, our Savior, and who he surrounded himself with in those times. Like if we were to put it in our day, it's like those people that the mismatch, right? Like
that was a wild group of dudes.
It's a wild group of dudes. And so we think about what he did to teach all of them and to transform all of them. And it's like, not to say we're the ones that, like, we're not the Jesuses, we're the misfits, right? Like we're all a group of misfits and we're just trying to love each other. And we can still kind of stand for what we believe in amidst the diversity of all the opinions and chaos. And I just think, that's a better life. Like Natalie said, like it's more interesting. It's more like what Jesus would have done. And I just think if we find ourselves kind of preaching to the choir in every conversation, in every article we read, in every setting, it's not the full life. It's not like what we're here for. We're here to be challenged, right? And Jesus even says like, it's easy to love your friend, right? It's just not easy to love your enemy. So it's like, if you're not encountering yourself with people that would be your enemies, the people you don't like, the people you don't agree with, like you're not having a full experience in this earth.
And I think we can serve as examples to each other. I recall one time, this is really a lightheart example, but I recall one time there was a coworker and I found his approach to be very old fashioned. And I didn't quite respect the way he was getting into it and executing and presenting this facet of our industry. And then one day I heard someone talk glowingly about him, someone that I respected. And it honestly stopped me because I'm like, huh? You like how he's doing it and what he's doing? And it totally changed my perception of this one person. Yeah. So even if we can't like be that person, we can at least influence others, I think, to love this way and to serve this way.
And I actually think that's a really good thing. So speaking of Natalie, one of the things she always does, which I really respect, and I think it's an important thing to piggyback on your point, is when people do speak unkindly about people you know because of their political views or because of whatever. Like it's important to stand up and say, that's not how I know this person. Or I love this person. I've seen this Natalie do this probably 50 times.
I get in trouble for this all the time.
No, but it's not in trouble.
That's wrong.
Because that's the kind of friend. I mean, wouldn't we all want that friend in that room where everyone's, kind of piggybacking and saying how much they don't like you?
She expresses loyalty with love.
Just her truth, what she knows. Well, that's not what I know about this person. And that's okay. Yeah. I mean, I just love that you pointed that as an example because it does change views. And it's like the only way to change narratives that are negative about people in our communities or our wards is somebody standing up and be like, oh, but she's so great at this. And I'm surprised to hear what you're saying about her that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. This feels so good, doesn't it? I hope we're getting better at this and closer to this. Like this feels good, especially now with everything swirling around in the way that it is.
I mean, I think that this is a really timely conversation because I think it's just going to make everybody more and like as we get closer, we're having natural disaster. Like everything feels like it's on fire.
Yes.
Like it's nice to just be like, also just like calm down. You need to calm down. Like come on. Like it's just we're just a little Taylor Swift, Like everyone just calm down. Calm down.
Yeah. I love you both. I love you both. I appreciate your perspective, your experiences, your insight. This was everything I hoped it would be. So thank you so much.
It's such a treat.
Thanks so much.
Before you go, we want to let you know that you are invited to be a part of our community. So first, go follow us on Instagram at Magnify Community. This is the best place for all things Magnify, and we love interacting with our community. And did you know we have a newsletter? You can subscribe now by heading to our website, magnifythegood.com, for more details. Finally, we still have 2 more Lift Up Your Heart events that we want you to join us at. We just got back from Idaho Falls, and it was so great to be with women just like you. Registration is still open for St. George and Salt Lake City, which are both in November. Head to the show notes of this episode for more details, and don't forget you'll get a special discount code for listeners only. All those details are in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.